2023 was a big year for the North American rail industry with a handful of changes, expansions, and steps towards the future. Coming up now on This Year on the Railroad, we'll be counting down the top 10 biggest rail news stories of 2024. Before the video begins though, make sure you're subscribed. Over the past month, this channel has grown quite a bit thanks to weekly uploads, and it turns out 86% of my viewers aren't subscribed. We're just under 100 subs away from 20,000, and every one counts. So help me hit my goal of reaching 20,000 subscribers before 2024. Now, back to the video. Number 10. Honolulu Metro. A handful of exciting new rail lines opened this year, but perhaps none were more unique than Honolulu's Skyline. The Skyline, or Honolulu Light Metro, is a brand new rapid transit system more than 50 years in the making. Though it was proposed in the mid-60s, construction didn't begin until 2011, and after facing countless delays throughout the early 2020s, Hawaii's first rail public transit opened to the public on June 30th, 2023. This day marked the debut of perhaps the most modern metro system in the United States, featuring elevated lines, platform doors, and fully automated trains. While only 11 miles of the Skyline are currently operating, in 2025 and later 2031, the line will be expanded east to serve the airport and eventually downtown Honolulu. Number 9. First Amtrak Aero car built. In late 2022, Amtrak revealed renderings of their future Aero trains, which are set to replace the majority of its 1970s-era cars over the course of the 2020s. Just about a year after those renderings came out, the first Aero car was completed and revealed by Siemens Mobility on October 11, 2023. Though it wasn't furnished, and is nowhere close to being entered into revenue service, it was exciting to see that the Aero project was on schedule and that a prototype car has already been built. Amtrak Aero trains are most definitely set to be a big part of 2024 and beyond, so stay tuned for more news. Number 8. California Emissions Law. On April 27, 2023, the California Air Resources Board, or CARB for short, passed legislation set to completely change railroads in California. This regulation is intended to slowly transition mostly diesel-powered railroads to full zero emissions by the late 2030s. The in-use locomotive regulation will require that every railroad in California establishes a spending account, which they will be required to put a sum of money calculated by the state aside to purchasing lower and later zero emissions locomotives. Additionally, beginning in 2030, locomotives with engines older than 23 years old will be required to be retired, meaning that by the early 2040s, California railroads will be majority, if not entirely, zero emissions. Of course, the law goes a lot deeper than that, and there are exemptions to it, but that warrants its own video. Maybe that'll be something I do in 2024. This law, though controversial, is undoubtedly going to change how the railroad works in California, and possibly begin to influence other states too. If you're watching this video when it's new, the initial parts of this legislation will come into effect tomorrow on January 1st, so rest assured that this will remain a relevant story in 2024. Number 7. Montreal REM. On July 29, 2023, yet another modern, fully automated rail rapid transit service was opened, this time in Montreal, Quebec. The, sorry in advance, Réseau Express Metropolitain, or REM, is a new light metro currently operating between Brossard and downtown Montreal, with connections planned to the airport and a couple of other places I'm not even going to try to pronounce. The REM is currently what I would call the most modern passenger railroad in Canada, and with massive expansions planned for the future, it'll be transformative to the city of Montreal. Number 6. CSX Heritage Units. On May 10th, after years of requests from rail fans, CSX released its first Heritage Unit. Since May, CSX's Heritage program has seen 7 modern locomotives painted with the colors of CSX's predecessor railroads. To date, we've seen the Baltimore and Ohio, Chessie, Seaboard, Conrail, Chesapeake and Ohio, Louisville and Nashville, and the Atlantic Coastline. Unlike other railroads' heritage programs, though, CSX has opted to keep its own paint on the noses of these locomotives, which has received a mixed reaction from rail fans. Painted or unpainted cab, in my opinion, these heritage units are better than nothing, and CSX has done a great job with the parts of these locomotives they have painted. More are undoubtedly coming in the new year. A few to look forward to are the New York Central, RF&P, Indianapolis and Louisville, and the Clinchfield. Number 5. Amtrak and Texas Central Partnership. Texas Central is a privately funded high-speed rail project with the goal of building a Japanese-style Shinkansen between Dallas and Houston. Despite some key legal wins in 2022, Texas Central progress seemed to stagnate into 2023, that is until August, when Amtrak and Texas Central announced a partnership that plans to revitalize the project and get it moving once again. Since this announcement, Amtrak has helped Texas Central to apply for federal grants and will help this $30 billion project get going once again. As is the case with many of these stories, they will continue throughout 2024, and perhaps Texas Central will be able to recover from its current slump. Number 4. Derailment in Ohio. Now, I very rarely cover derailments on this show, partially because they're really not that interesting to report on, and also because they're a lot more common than people think. On February 3rd, however, a Norfolk Southern train carrying toxic vinyl chloride gas derailed in the small town of East Palestine, Ohio, grabbing headlines nationwide. While there was quite a bit of uninformed and questionable reporting, this Norfolk Southern derailment caused so much damage to this Ohio town that the CEO of Norfolk Southern had to testify in Congress. As such a major event, this derailment led to an increased scrutiny of North American freight railroads' cost-cutting practices from people in power, which is always good. Number 3. East Side Access. MTA's two commuter rails, Metro North and the Long Island Railroad, both operate in and out of New York City and are some of the busiest passenger railroads in the United States. Despite their size, though, for their entire history it was impossible to connect directly between trains as they used completely different terminals in Manhattan. Up until 2023, that is. On January 25th, after almost 16 years of construction, the MTA's East Side Access project was completed, allowing Long Island Railroad trains for the first time ever to operate into Grand Central Terminal as opposed to Penn Station. Number 2. Brightline in Orlando. Brightline is a privately funded, higher-speed passenger railroad which operated between Miami and West Palm Beach up until recently. After years of construction and testing, on September 22nd, Brightline officially opened its Orlando line to passengers. As the only privately funded intercity rail operator in America, Brightline makes the news quite a bit, but the opening of its Orlando line is easily the biggest news coming from the railroad since its opening. Perhaps even more excitingly, in its first few months of service, the Orlando line has already seen consistent ridership, and Brightline is already shifting focus to expanding the line further west to Tampa and working on an all-new true high-speed rail line out west. Brightline, as usual, is one of the most promising rail operators in the United States. Before we get to the number 1 spot on this list, I want to mention a few stories that didn't quite make the cut. Probably the funniest story of 2023 was the fact that on multiple occasions, CSX locomotives were vandalized with spot-on heritage paint jobs on the nose in protest of CSX's unique approach to heritage units. Another story that didn't quite make the cut was all of Mexico's new passenger trains this year. This one was left out simply because there will most likely be even more to come out of Mexico in 2024, and this project is just in the beginning stages. Finally, I didn't mention the new Amtrak HHP8-based cab cars. This is mostly due to the fact that they haven't entered service yet, so stay tuned. Alright, now for number 1, the Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern merger. Beginning in 2021, Canadian Pacific, a Class 1 railroad operating in Canada and the United States, wanted to purchase Kansas City Southern, a smaller Class 1 freight railroad operating in the United States and Mexico. After more than 2 years of back and forth, lawsuits from other railroads, and more red tape, on March 13, 2023, the Surface Transportation Board gave Canadian Pacific the final approval to merge with Kansas City Southern. Just over a month later, the railroads became one, being renamed to Canadian Pacific Kansas City. I know, terrible name. This new railroad is surprisingly still not the biggest in North America, but it certainly has the widest operating range, being the first railroad ever to own tracks in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Despite the fact that a CPKC train derailed less than 24 hours after the merger, the Canadian Pacific and KCS have transitioned relatively smoothly into one railroad, with an official paint scheme being designed in June. It's not every day that a new Class 1 railroad is created, and as such a rare occasion, the creation of CPKC will surely lead to more news in the future. 2023 was a big year, and as some of you may have noticed, many of these stories are still developing. A lot is set to take place in the new year. Here's what you can expect. Hopefully, the debut of Amtrak's Acela 2 trains, the California emissions law taking effect, Amtrak service in the Gulf Coast, the MBTA South Coast Rail extension, the electrification of Caltrain, Tri-Rail in downtown Miami, BNSF taking over Montana Rail Link, a handful of light rail extensions, and the beginning of a Mexican passenger rail network. Additionally, I'm predicting that 2024 will be the year of the battery locomotive. Despite my well-known opinions that battery electric locomotives are not ideal when compared to full electrification, there are countless railroads expected to take delivery to such machines this year. Finally, and this is optimistic, I think that 2024 will be a year of high-speed rail. Amtrak has been receiving an unprecedented amount of funding as of late, and is in the early stages of reviving the Texas Central project. Brightline is ahead of schedule on its Tampa extension, and is pretty much ready to break ground on Brightline West, and California High-Speed Rail continues to make steady progress. Overall, I have high expectations for 2024, and I can't wait to report on all these stories. Thanks for joining me in 2023, and if you're new, welcome aboard. See you all in 2024.